Two Republicans are vying for the District 3 state Senate seat ahead of the May 12th primary. Our Chase Campbell talked with Mike Azinger and Bob Fehrenbacher about what they believe West Virginia needs to succeed and prosper.
West Virginia Senator Mike Azinger is seeking re-election, challenged in the May 12th Republican primary by Delegate Bob Fehrenbacher. Azinger touts a fiscally conservative record marked by vocal support for tax cuts and deregulation.
In terms of just being a rock-ribbed fiscal conservative with cutting taxes, cutting regulation, and tort reform and right to work, I've been in that since 2014.
Fehrenbacher says his top priority if elected would be economic development. He points to the House's Jobs First, Opportunity Everywhere agenda from the recent legislative session as a model.
Supporting economic development and job growth. Things like preparing our workforce, creating capital for small West Virginia-based businesses.
Fehrenbacher says he believes the Senate has been distracted in recent years, failing to advance legislation to drive economic development.
Frankly, the last couple of years, the Senate has focused on things that have not driven the state forward in broad economic development.
Fehrenbacher points to the Team WV Act, a bill that the House passed during the last session but which stalled in the Senate, modeled after Ohio's Jobs Ohio initiative, which encourages business development in the state. Fehrenbacher says the legislation would have helped bring jobs to West Virginia.
We are on the border of the state of Ohio. They have this entity, Jobs Ohio, that spends full-time efforts to bring jobs to the state of Ohio. We don't have that.
Azinger disputes how effective the proposal would have been.
If he's got a great vision for jobs, I'd like to hear about it, and if that was a great vision for it, the Senate would have taken it up.
Azinger says West Virginia is already making good strides in economic development and attracting more people to the state.
People are moving into the state. If you look at Jefferson, Berkeley, Morgan counties, they're starting to prosper over there. People are moving in over there. If you look at Mon County and Mason County, where Nucor is, Putnam County, there's spots in the state that are becoming job creators, population centers now.
Azinger says he believes the state needs to continue cutting its income tax, as it has done under Governor Patrick Morrisey and former Governor Jim Justice, to drive economic development and bring jobs.
We've been steadily, over the last 5 or 6 years, getting rid of the income tax in West Virginia to where we're over 30% of our income tax in the last few years is cut. And Governor Morrisey just led the charge on another 5% of our income tax being cut just this last session. That's what brings wealth into the state. That's what brings job creators into the state. That's what brings population and jobs into the state, the income tax.
Fehrenbacher suggests the state would benefit from more focused initiatives, pointing to 2 bills introduced last year intended to help grow the aviation industry. Bills that, like the Team WV Act, didn't make it through the Senate.
There were 2 bills that were introduced that did not get through the Senate. One of them was going to help train people to find jobs and work jobs in the aviation industry. Another bill was going to create a fund to build hangars. There is a backlog of business opportunity that could come to West Virginia, including our regional airport here in Wood County. They did not get through the Senate.
Outside of economic development, Azinger notes his support for socially conservative legislation, like the 2025 measure he sponsored to require schools to display the national motto of "In God We Trust."
Every student and every employee can see that what our U.S. motto is, first of all, officially brought in by Eisenhower, and the fact that God has been part of our foundation and our beginnings all the way back to pre-Revolutionary War.
Azinger questions whether Fehrenbacher's values align with that socially conservative agenda, an agenda he says reflects the attitudes of his constituents.
He's known as being woke in a lot of ways. He's known as being a rhino. Bob's a nice guy. I like Bob, but he is not a fit for the conservative 3rd District.
Fehrenbacher says focusing on a socially conservative agenda shouldn't come at the expense of other policy priorities.
My opponent talks about how conservative he is, but my question, what have you delivered? What has helped people in West Virginia, kitchen table topics? Can I pay the rent? Do I have a good job? Do I have good benefits? Conservatism is fine. I support a number of those bills, but if that is the sole focus, we are misguided, and we have to change.
Voters will decide the race on May 12th. In Parkersburg, Chase Campbell, WTAP News.